It's Taste of Country Nights with Evan Paul on demand, season 2, episode 23 with Terri Clark. You toured with Toby?
Oh God, yeah. I did the whole throwdown tour in 2000. Gosh, what year was it? 2003, I think. And we just had so much. The reason I'm blanking is because we also drank a lot. Toby had some epic parties on his bus after shows, and Brian O'Connell, our promoter for those shows at the time, who's still a very good friend, would DJ with his computer. He'd have all the tunes going, and that bus was just up, and we'd start rocking, you know? And Toby and I spent a lot of time together on that tour, just hanging out after shows and chewing the fat.
I truly had a lot of fun with country icon legend Terri Clark. Man, she had some stories to tell. And this new album that she has coming out with a remake of all her older songs with current country artists is amazing. And we get into that in this interview here. Now, for our past interviews at Taste of Country Nights on Demand, recently we've had Jelly Roll last week. Week before that, Luke Combs was here. Thomas Rhett's been on the show. Just search for Taste of Country Nights on demand wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And thank you in advance for checking this episode out. It's part of the Town Square Media Podcast Network. Evan Paul here. We're hanging out with Terri Clark. What's happening?
Oh, very little. How are you doing, Evan?
I'm doing good. Very little.
I just got up. You got me up early today.
Hey, but you got a whole album coming out. You got a lot going on.
Yeah.
I want to get into it. What inspired you to kind of retoy and retool all these?
Well, these songs have been a part of my life for a very, very long time. And it was just, it felt like a really cool idea to go back in. And it's nothing super original. Like Brooks and Dunn have done this, and Tracy Lawrence has done it. But kind of going in and updating these songs that have become staples in my show, and that my fans have been coming and listening to this certain way for so long. And also for me and my band, I've had the same band members for a long time, and freshening them up and giving them a bit of a new life gives us a different way to play them live without losing the integrity of the original recording. I didn't, go and completely paint a mustache on the Mona Lisa or anything like that. But
so like when you guys get into the studio and all the guitar players and drummers and everybody get in and they hear their isolated parts from years back, is anyone like, man, I've gotten so much better? Or like,
well, they're not the same band that played on the original recordings. Like a lot of the guys in the band were, they were teenagers when we did the original recordings. But so the studio musicians I used on this round were not the same studio musicians I used back in 1995, 96, 97, whatever. So they were able to put their own spin on it too, creatively, which was really nice. And Adam Schoenfeld, who was the band leader, is a guitar player who plays on so many of today's big hits. And he's in Tim McGraw's band, and he played with Jason Aldean. And so he's somebody who really has his pulse on what's going on. But he loved the original recording so much too. We struggled with a couple of them, like, God, I don't know that we need to change this lick. It's just such an iconic lick, But so we don't know how much to push it and how much to keep it the same. But I think the songs that are the most different are probably If I Were You and I Just Want to Be Mad. The Cody Johnson and Kelly Clarkson duets. But those, they just lent themselves to a bit of a different treatment.
So that's like kind of sonically or what have you. What songs mean something different to you today than they did back then? Oh, gosh.
I'll tell you what. I don't know that they mean something different because the song is written, and that's the attitude. I think that, when you sing a song that has a certain spin on it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, you start to kind of stop thinking about what it means, and you almost are just singing the song without really connecting that lyric with a person sitting in the front row. It's not like you check out, but you've sung it so many times, it's just hitting the notes. This brought me back to what these songs were about in the first place, and Better Things to Do is about, I'm not going to waste my time crying over you, and just really digging into the lyric again. And it just reintroduced me to the lyrics of these songs and what they mean to people and what they could mean to people hearing them for the first time. And I'm now singing them like I sang them for the first time and haven't done them thousands of times. So it's been a really nice freshen up, reboot for me, so to speak.
And you have like all the contemporary hit makers on it now. Who were you rolling with back in the day?
Oh gosh, who was I rolling with? Who was I touring with? Well,
like when you were a new and upcoming artist in country music, like who were you friends with?
Oh, Reba, and she's still a friend to this day. You know, I met her for the first time. I think it was at Fanfare, CMA Fest now, back in I want to say my first or second CMA Fest, and she actually handed me a gold record for my first album. And I sold her cowboy boots before I ever got a record deal. She walked into the store I was a sales girl at. I was in her fan club when I was a teenager. So she's been a very consistent part of my life since before she knew I even existed.
Wow.
Her and the Judds were probably my two biggest influences musically as a teenager. And just, having these women's number in my phone still blows me away that I can send a text to either Wynonna or Reba. It's crazy to me.
Still?
It's
really?
crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, Reba, and I got to tour with Brooks and Dunn, and those guys have always been so awesome. Every time I see them, it's just smiles and great memories. I didn't get to know George Strait really well because he was flying in and out for the tour that I did with him. But anytime I've ever seen him, he's just so friendly. And I just, I of course became friends with Clay Walker and Tracy Lawrence and all those guys that were having hits right around the time when my singles were going up to the top of the charts, and Mark Chestnut and that class of, the late great Joe Diffie and Toby, and like that was my class, of the 90s and the artists that were out doing the radio rounds. And at the time, Blake Shelton, before he was a household name, he came out in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I remember battling him for number one between Girls Like Two and Austin. We were both doing radio round robins to try and get our spins up. And
Wow.
I was duking it out with Blake Shelton for that number one spot at the time. So there's just so many great memories with so many artists.
Okay, yeah, I have a lot of follow-ups here. Can you give me any Blake's stories from
I got a great one.
Early Blake. Yeah.
Oh, early Blake, Mullet Blake.
Yeah.
My best Blake story was CMA Fest, then Fanfare at the fairgrounds. And it's more of a story that he should tell because it's pretty funny, but he was getting out of a car and getting into a golf cart to go sign, and there were a bunch of fans behind him. All they could see was behind him.
The mullet.
And they're going, Terry! Hey, Terry! I'm like, this is really bad for me. And really bad for him. Like, seriously? People saw me as, like, I looked like a football player with a mullet? What the hell, man? What is wrong with this?
That's hilarious.
And then he immediately cut his hair.
Really? That's the reason?
He tells a story. Like, that might be one of the reasons why he cut his hair.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I don't want to be
epic.
mistaken for a chick, man.
So that one moment essentially changed country music because, I mean, the mullet, when he lost the mullet, was a big deal.
I take it as a compliment. He has a better ass than me.
What about, do you toured with Toby?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
I did the whole Throwdown tour in 2000. Gosh, what year was it? 2003, I think. 2004. And we just had so much. The reason I'm blanking is because we also drank a lot. Toby had some epic parties on his bus after shows, and Brian O'Connell, our promoter for those shows at the time, who's still a very good friend, would DJ with his computer. He'd have all the tunes going, and that bus was just up, and we'd start rocking, And Toby and I spent a lot of time together on that tour, just hanging out after shows and chewing the fat, talking. I got advice from him. We had some very funny moments. We shared a few dips and a few whiskeys, and I absolutely love the man. I appreciated his sense of individuality and who he was, and his authenticity and his songwriting. I mean, gosh, there are a lot of good singers out there, and Toby was a good singer and a great singer, but not everybody can write a song like that just appeals to the masses. And he like got into his audience's head and knew what they wanted to hear. And I think he just wrote from his heart. And when you do that, we all have a heart. We all can relate. And he's so missed. And it makes me really sad. I'm not ever going to see him again in this lifetime, but I think we'll all see each other again. At some point. Well, that'll be a hell of a band.
Yeah.
Right.
He's already up there rocking.
No, I know it.
You were surrounded by it was a lot of guys in country music then. Now there's a lot of women and a lot of camaraderie within the women. Was there any camaraderie with the women that were around when you were?
I think there was camaraderie, but I think it felt almost like, I'm sure there's competitiveness going on today. With the new, a sense of competing with yourself more than anything. But I find because there was such a stale point at radio for women in country music for a long time, there and it's still not even by any sense. I think there's a more of a we got to stick togetherness now than there was in the 90s when everybody was getting airplay. I mean, all the women who were making great records were getting airplay, and there just doesn't seem to be as much room for every woman now. And for whatever reason, I think that has actually brought everybody closer together. Like I sense a real sisterhood of women supporting women now that, not that we didn't have that then, but it feels much stronger now.
Well, was there anyone that, looking back on your career, was there anyone that you were like, man, I was too overly competitive? I know you mentioned the Blake Shelton Austin thing, but like female wise, was there anyone that you were like, man, I was just too overly competitive with Shania, and I shouldn't have done that? Or
are we allowed to swear on this show?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, Shania and I were it was apples and oranges. We were on the same label. If anything, she probably helped my career because they were probably able to leverage her to help me get some stuff. But Shania was Canadian. She was on the same label. The place where I felt her the most was probably at a Canadian awards shows.
Okay.
I was like, oh my God, of course. She's got to be Canadian. And Paul Brandt comes up to me one day and he goes, I'm so sorry, Terry. It's like if Garth Brooks were Canadian, I'd be screwed. So I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm going up against the 800-pound gorilla who happens to be Canadian. But no, I'm so proud of her success, and she's on another stratosphere. She's like a Taylor Swift type of fame. You can't compare with that. But yeah, to be really honest, it was like I kind of felt like I was just doing my own thing for the longest time. We all compete for radio airplay at that time. We're all competing. I just worked so much. I think my agent at William Morris told me one time, he said, you are probably the hardest working girl on our roster. And they have a big roster, and I worked a lot of dates for a lot of years. I opened a lot of tours. I was definitely the opening act for a lot of really great tours, which helped me get in front of big audiences and hone, entertaining people. But I remember hearing Redneck Woman for the first time, and I went, oh, shit.
Here we go. Yeah.
That one kind of got me a little bit. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
What a hit, though. I love huge, Gretchen.
Yeah.
I'm really happy for her. But, yeah, that was kind of a whoo. Wow, I better strap on my seatbelt. Here she comes.
Interesting. I get a kick out of when I'm listening back to something like the Donahue reference and Better Things to Do. Are there lyrics like that in your catalog that'll really put fans back into the 90s and early 2000s?
I toyed with changing that when we re-recorded it with Ashley McBride. But I thought, if we change the lyrics to these songs, I know we're updating the tracks and freshening them up, but I do change it live. Instead of Donahue, I say I'd rather watch YouTube. But who knows when YouTube's going to be out of style? So and I feel like it's kind of our job to educate people. I had a 23-year-old guitar tech working with me for a while, and the first show she did with us, she asked me after the show. She said, she goes, "Sir," she used to call me sir. What is a Donahue?
Really? Are you serious?
Yeah, she also asked what a bordello was too at one point, so we had to explain a few things to her.
Okay. Wow, they're not doing good for the youngins.
No, so I figured leaving Donahue in there, if it raises the question, somebody will Google Donahue and find out who he is. But we left that kind of it's pop culture of the 90s and 80s and so we just left it alone.
Now, how do you get Kelly Clarkson on a project like this? She's really busy. Do you guys go way back?
She's very busy. It was a small miracle to get Kelly because we go back to about 10 years. She hosted a birthday party for a mutual friend and at her house, and I got invited to it. And he just celebrated his 50th, actually, which is exactly 10 years later. And I met her there and just found her so authentic and genuine and sweet. And she was actually pregnant at the time. And then, fast forward to today, and I don't ever remember exchanging numbers with her or anything like that. But I get this really random, weird text come up on my phone that said, do you think we should go to the stop here before we go to the airport or go to see the whatever? I was like, who is this? And I didn't recognize the number. And then I said, who is this? And she went, Trisha, is this Trisha? And I went, no, this is not Trisha. And she said, who is this? And I said, I'm like, oh my God, who's got my number? Right. So we go back and forth like this. And she said, oh my God, is this Terri Clark? And I said, I'm driving right now. I will text you back when I get where I'm going. I put her off. I said I was driving, that auto text thing. Yeah. Meanwhile, she's dropping hints that she's Kelly Clarkson, but not telling me she's Kelly Clarkson. She's sending me photos of her betting line. And I'm just like, wow. So then she says, well, one time when you were hosting a radio show, I started singing your song to you over the phone, but it was actually Patty Loveless. It wasn't you. And I'm like, okay, this has got to be Kelly. Like, this is the only person I thought it could be. So then I texted Reba and I said, is this Kelly Clarkson's phone number?
Jeez.
So I'm texting Reba about Kelly Clarkson, texting me about impersonating Patty Loveless. It's just all just a bizarre happenstance. So anyway, we finally figured out that we were talking to the person we thought we might be talking to because we were both afraid to say who we were in case some, lunatic got a hold of the phone number. And so I'm like, while I have you, I'm doing this project. And I had, honest to God, I swear on everything I know, I had talked to my managers about trying to ask her to do a song on this like 2 weeks prior to this happening. Wow. So it seemed like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Because she loves 90s country women especially. She's talked about that publicly.
What a story.
I know. It's crazy.
Did the Cody Johnson record, did he choose that or did you give him that one?
Well, we talked about 3 different choices and that was the one I actually thought originally would make the best duet because of the conversational aspect of the lyric. But we kind of went around the long way around, and he came back to that when he said, I've really listened to this, and I think this is the one we should do. And he wasn't there for tracking, so we went in to track the song, and, we just came up with a completely different treatment that sounded more Cody, and it toughened up and it slowed down. And the duet, it turned into an actual conversation between 2 people in a relationship that is so real and so everyday life. He told me the other day, he said, I've listened to that track about 1,000 times.
Wow.
He said, when me and Mandy get in a fight, I play it for, or Brandy, sorry, get in a fight, I play it for her, we laugh. So, yeah, so it is very relatable, and it may be my favorite one out of all of these, just because it is such a new take on this song, and our voices sound so great together, and I love who he is, and I respect, he's kind of like, the lifestyle of George Strait and the song sense of Tim McGraw and his voice is just unbelievable. Just such a great singer that you roll that all into one and you get Cody Johnson. He's amazing.
Yeah, he'll never get a manicure or pedicure. I've asked him that.
No,
yeah.
I don't see that. There's no man in manicure.
Yeah, right. You also work with Lainey. Do you see like a young Terri Clark and Lainey? Like she's
just her own person, and absolutely, like she's. When I came out in 1995, I looked at all the women and what they were doing, and I just did something completely else different. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I see what everybody's doing right now, so I'm going to do the opposite. And the guys were all wearing cowboy hats and starched Wranglers, and I was comfortable in that, just being from Alberta and selling Western apparel for a living. And Lainey, grew up farming and ranching and all of that stuff. I didn't, but I love that she's just created her own brand and image from the get-go. And, I see a lot of women wearing cowboy hats now. So, if I was coming out now, I probably wouldn't, just because everybody else is.
Well, it's interesting because that's what she said. She thinks is part of her success is that she just did exactly what you said. She studied what all the women were doing and then did the opposite. Yeah.
And bell bottoms, she's got a couple things going on. She doesn't wear, the same hat all the time. Yeah. It's not always like a cattleman's crease cowboy hat or Texas style hat, but she definitely has her own thing going on and is so successful. And I got to tell you, when she pulled up to do this session, She showed up without a manager, without an entourage. She pulled up in the biggest, highest pickup truck I've ever seen, and she tried to park the thing. And the ass end of this truck is hanging right out in the middle of the road. And I'm just like, we're directing her to get as close as possible to the curb. And she needed a ladder to get out of the thing, but she was so genuinely sweet. Just pulled up by herself. All right, let's go to work.
Wow.
And I just knew she was the real deal right off the bat.
Wow. Who would you say didn't get a fair shake looking back? What country artist didn't get a fair shake at everything? Could have been a bigger star.
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. Who didn't get a fair shake? I'm trying to get my because I think everybody's done really well. Are you talking about like the 90s artists?
Yeah.
Let me see. God, that's a trick question. You should have given me more notice with that one.
We'll come back to it.
Come back to it. Yeah.
Would you ever cash in and sell your catalog? A lot of people are doing that.
I don't know. It would depend on the number, I guess.
Okay.
I'd have to see what I'm making every year with it in my, royalty statements and weigh that out with the big number at the end of the day. Would that make any difference? Luckily, I think that all of us in the 90s are experiencing a resurgence of that era of country music. And I think we're going out and we're getting a little bit more than we did 10 years ago, even for shows, for touring and festivals and things like that. So, I think everybody's getting a bit of a second shot at banking some money for retirement and going in and,
that.
and I think that's really, really great. And the artists that are going out and doing that may not have to do something like that. So, I know I love it too. I think it's a bit, and back to your question about a fair shake, I think that there was a period of time where 90s acts sort of not getting forgotten, but sort of when something becomes cool again, people just start jumping on the bandwagon, and it's not like we're going to get number one hits on the radio anymore, but more of the younger generation are looking into it, and they're like, when they see somebody like me and Lainey or me and Cody or me and Ashley doing a song and they're a fan of theirs and they were like, who the hell is that? Then they go and they'll look it up and they'll dig into the deeper cuts in the catalog and go, I like that. You know?
I mean, in all honesty, it's cool that you did this for you, but it's really cool for country music. Like, it's a really good bridge for country music, bringing the new artists and the 90s, and I think it's going to be really successful. I'm glad you did this. This was
Thank
really
you.
cool. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I did it too. And it's fun to be able to talk about some new stuff, but also, with the classic spin and honoring the past and bringing it into the future a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Evan.
All right, let's bring in Billy Dukes from behind the camera to talk about this interview. This interview kind of surprised me, man. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know Terri was kind of in your blind spot a little bit. What did you take away from the conversation?
She's really famous back in the day and so famous now. I thought it was cool that, she's putting out a re-release of her songs, but has everyone who's anyone in country music currently on it, which to me really showed how much of an impact she had on country music.
She's a really interesting bridge between that late 90s, early 2000s country music and contemporary country. And, some of the songs work today pretty well. I Want to Do It All. That's still a banger. Girls Lie Too. It still hits. And that's not true necessarily with all the 90s songs. I mean, something like the Joe Diffie songs, they sound a little corny. Not all of them, but some of them sound a little bit corny in 2024. But Terri's work, I love them.
Yeah, definitely. And they sound really good redone as well with the current artists. And I think they got together and chose the right artist for the right songs.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was fascinated. You asked her about the camaraderie with the women in country music back in the 90s, 2000s. We've asked other artists that. I've been kind of low-key kind of investigating that. Like Sarah Evans talked about it. I think Jody Messina, when we had her in, she talked about it. And my takeaway was, there wasn't this sort of fellowship between the women of country music back then. It wasn't a thing. There wasn't whatever the equivalent of a text threads was. And it probably was a bit more competitive and cutthroat 25 years ago than it is today.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it too because like you said, they couldn't like get on social media. They couldn't text each other. When you're on the road back then, they probably couldn't even call each other. Like, what are you going to do? Call the hotel, call the tour bus? So it's like they probably didn't speak to each other very often. And when they did, it was either at, you know, shows that they were co-headlining or headlining or crossing paths at different meetings and whatnot. But yeah, I gotta believe that there was some low-key beef going on between some of the ladies of country back then.
Do you think we're being fleeced about the women in country music today? Do you think like there's these like rivalries that like we just don't know about?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. But I think that the people that are the ladies that are a part of them they don't know they're a part of them either. You know, it's like when if you listen to a past podcast episode of Taste of Country Nights on Demand, where we spoke to Garth Brooks and Ronnie Dunn, they said, you know, like in each other's faces, they're like, yeah, we're good friends. How you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. But when they go behind the curtain, he was like, everyone's like, get me a faster horse. So I feel like, even though Carly Pearce says that her and Kelsey Ballerini are great friends and they talk all the time, you know, if they had competing records on the chart, listen, nobody's friendly when it comes to money. You know, that's how I think what it all boils down to.
Well, the one thing that has changed is I think there's more ways to win today. Like, you can have a number one radio hit and another artist can have the number one sales hit. And like, in a sense, everybody's sort of winning. Or like streaming hit. Like, there's more roads for everybody to drive on. Whereas 25, 30 years ago, it was radio. Like, you were competing for that radio spot and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly, the landscape has certainly changed, that's for sure.
Or I guess awards, too. You know, you're competing, and Terry mentioned this, like with Shania Twain, like, you know, she was rating her way, like winning all those awards. She was an amazing artist, also from Canada, so when it came to any sort of Canadian, and Canada has their own, like, legit country music awards, their own awards system. Like, Terry was always going to be like the Susan Lucci, in a sense.
Yeah, and she was probably like a little like upset low key that like, dang it, why is the other woman in country that's doing really well have to be from Canada? You know, like, because Terry could have had a certain niche there if it wasn't for Shania.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Montgomery Gentry was like that a little bit too. Like, they were always the second place to Brooks and Dunn for like a decade. It was the Donahue line in Better Things to Do stood out to me because I wouldn't say I watched a lot of Donahue, but like I was certainly familiar of what he did, and I don't know if it translates to today because that show hasn't been on in a really long time. I don't know. There's other examples of that too that I kind of get a chuckle at. Alan Jackson had a song called like www.memory, I think is a little bit it's a little bit strange to listen to today.
Well, I thought it was cool that she admitted to changing some of the lyrics when they do it live or whatever, and then they thought about changing it in the song, you know, because you're right, man. Like, but there's definitely two sides to it. It's like, some people are going to be upset that there's if you change it, it's not the classic, it's not the same, and you're conforming to today's society. And then some people will be like, "Who's Donahue?" And you know, but I don't even know what side I fall on. I think I would want to hear it. I think I would want to hear it not updated. I think I would want to hear it the same exact way that I always heard it.
Yeah, it's not a big deal at the end of the day for me. I don't get too hung up on those details, but you're right. People do, like, especially when it comes to beer brands. If people are like changing the brand of beer for like, I don't know if there's a controversy, but also maybe if they're playing in like a Miller Lite bar and they have a Bud Light song, you know, you maybe want to play it Miller Lite because
yeah, no. A perfect example. When I used to do the radio in Detroit, I had a club that I did a party at every Thursday night in Canada. And every time Journey, whatever that song was, AC/DC. Where it's like, knocking me out with those American thighs. I would get on the mic and we would say, knocking them out with those Canadian thighs. And like the American girls would get upset. Like, why'd you change? Why are you saying Canadian? And I'd be like, well, I'm in Canada. But people do get upset when you change lyrics.
Sweet Home Alabama has probably been changed to every state in the union.
Sweet Home Pennsylvania.
Sweet Home Maine. Maybe just the 4-syllable states work.
Yeah.
What inspired you to ask the would she cash in her catalog question? I thought that was a good question. I thought that was her answer was pretty well thought too and honest.
Dude, I think that's the next wave. I think that everyone is starting to do that. And I watched a great interview with Nelly, and he was just talking about, because the rapper recently cashed in his catalog, and it's your equity, and the money is, I don't know, the older you get, the more I don't know. It just seems like it'd be easier as an older artist to just wash your hands clean of it and just get it one check. You know, if I'm a 90s artist and I never had anything like Terri Clark, I never had anything to do with streaming and this and that and this and YouTube and all that. And if someone would just say, we'll take all of that from all your old songs and we'll do all that. You don't even worry about it anymore. You just play them and make money on shows and we'll give you $30 million. I feel like it'd be interesting to know which artists would take that. And then is that a form of selling out or is that a form of cashing in?
Oh, well, 100% it is. But like, what's the downside? Especially if like, right now, Terri Clark, the market is probably high. It's probably as good of a price as she can get currently. Or maybe within the next year or 5 years, a year to 3 years, really. She's doing all these duets. She's got a lot of media push. She's going to have a whole summer full of tours. Mm-hmm. Maybe she can get like a single somewhere along the way, an award show appearance. Like, that's when you got to do it. I think, and she's probably smart enough to sort of realize that. You don't want to be too late.
Yeah. Aldean did it, right? For like, no one knows how much money. And
Blake, all the big artists, the A-listers have seemingly all sold one way or a portion of, if nothing else.
Yeah. What, like you said, what is there still to gain? I guess we don't really know all the logistics and paperwork and stuff, but it seems like as long as you can still perform them at your shows and, what do you care? I'll take the cash.
There was somebody, and I don't know, I think it was John Pardee or someone who sold. It was someone like a John Pardee who was pretty new into it. And it came across that he sold his publishing rights. And I was like, huh.
Yeah. That's a wave of the future, man. You make a couple songs and then sell it. Well, I mean that's interesting though, because he probably Pardee is probably like, I did what I could with those songs, and now I'll cash out, and then he's going to make. I'm assuming he didn't sell his future stuff, right?
I didn't look at the details, but I assume so.
I feel like if you're a current artist, that might not be a bad idea if you're still making like Aldean. But Pardee, he probably couldn't have got as much as Aldean for sure, but I don't know. He could still cash out 20 more years on the other ones, maybe.
One of my bad niche ideas is like a podcast where you just talk to artists about their money. Like, I don't know if we'd ever get anybody to do it, but I think it's interesting to just have conversations about like, we don't have to get into specifics about like how much money they're making, but just how they manage their money, how they handle their money, and just have a frank conversation about like the business end and talk about those things. But
I think it would be great. But yeah, I wonder how many, if you could do it, if you could do it without them having to give like dollar amounts, right. But then I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who would be willing to talk about it.
Terri Clark, and that's about it right now.
Yeah. How much do you think Terri Clark could get for her catalog?
Under $10 million.
Okay.
I would think. Because I think Aldine like got like 30 or 50 or something.
Okay.
So Terri Clark, under 10. 5 to 10?
That's fair.
I have no clue.
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea. Yeah. Whatever it is you think you're going to get, I would double it. That way, you get it after taxes. That's my thing.